For nearly 4 decades, the entire world watched Michael Jackson under a microscopic lens, analyzing every change in his skin tone, every modification to his face, and every whisper about his private life. He was the most famous human being on the planet, yet he remained its greatest mystery. A man hidden behind masks, sunglasses, and the gates of Neverland Ranch. While the media spun endless wild theories about his changing appearance, accusing him of turning his back on his heritage and trying to erase who he was, a quiet and profound truth was locked away deep within his own biology. For years, critics mocked his explanations, calling his health claims a carefully manufactured Hollywood cover-up. But when the definitive scientific analysis of his genetic material and the final medical forensic reports were finally laid bare, the world was forced to confront a reality that shattered decades of gossip. What scientists discovered hiding inside Michael Jackson's DNA was not a collection of eccentric aesthetic choices, but a tragic, undeniable biological blueprint of suffering, resilience, and a rare genetic battle that he fought entirely in the dark. This discovery did not just vindicate the king of pop. It completely flipped the script on everything the public thought they knew about his life, his body, and the secret agony he carried until his very last breath. To truly understand the weight of what science eventually uncovered, one must first understand the sheer scale of the myth that surrounded Michael Jackson during his lifetime. From the moment he burst onto the scene as a child prodigy with the Jackson 5, his body belonged to the public. We watched him grow from a charismatic, Afro-textured black teenager into a global pop icon who, by the mid-1990s, looked completely different. His skin had transitioned from a deep brown to a stark, pale white. His facial structure had undergone radical changes, and his reliance on heavy makeup, umbrellas, and full-body clothing sparked a media frenzy that bordered on obsession. The mainstream press labeled him with cruel nicknames, painting him as a reclusive eccentric who used his immense wealth to alter his race. Michael repeatedly tried to defend himself, most notably in his historic 1993 interview with Oprah Winfrey, where he emotionally revealed that he suffered from a skin disorder called vitiligo. Yet, the public remained deeply skeptical, treating his explanation as a convenient excuse designed to shield him from cultural backlash. For decades, the truth was treated as a matter of opinion rather than a matter of fact. However, science has a way of cutting through the noise of gossip columns and late-night television jokes. Following his tragic passing on June 25, 2009, a rigorous, undeniable scientific examination took place. The resulting forensic data and genetic reviews did not just settle the debate over his skin color. They opened a window into an incredibly complex web of autoimmune struggles and hereditary traits that paint a deeply moving picture of a man trapped inside a body that was essentially waging war against itself. What the DNA and forensic science ultimately revealed would stun his harshest critics and leave an indelible mark on his legacy. In this deep dive, we will explore the chronological timeline of Michael's physical transformation, the secret medical files that were hidden behind closed doors, the official breakthrough scientific findings, and how these revelations forever changed the world's perception of the king of pop. The date was June 25, 2009, a day that will forever be etched into the collective memory of pop culture. News of Michael Jackson's sudden cardiac arrest at his rented mansion in Holmby Hills, Los Angeles, broke the internet, literally slowing down major search engines and news websites across the globe. As fans gathered in tears outside the Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, the entertainment industry was thrown into absolute chaos. Amid the overwhelming grief and the unfolding criminal investigation into his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office was tasked with an immense responsibility. They had to perform a comprehensive, legally airtight autopsy on the most famous man on earth. For years, Michael Jackson had lived as a virtual ghost, rarely seen without heavy stage makeup, elaborate wigs, and protective clothing. The public had not seen the real, unaltered state of his body in decades. Therefore, when the coroner's team began their examination, it was the first time in modern history that independent medical professionals were seeing Michael Jackson exactly as he was, stripped of the illusions of Hollywood showmanship. The initial atmosphere surrounding the autopsy was charged with intense speculation. Tabloids were already preparing malicious stories, predicting that the examination would reveal a body destroyed by vanity and elective procedures. However, when the preliminary forensic observations began to leak to the press, the narrative took an immediate and shocking turn. The medical examiners did not find a man who had casually bleached his skin out of self-loathing. Instead, they observed a body that bore the unmistakable, undeniable physical hallmarks of severe, widespread disease. The initial physical mapping of his skin revealed that large swaths of his body were completely devoid of melanin, contrasting sharply with patches of his natural skin tone. The media, which had spent 25 years mocking his health claims, was suddenly faced with an unsettling reality. The long-awaited forensic report was about to provide definitive answers to questions that had divided the public for a generation. Observers noted that the atmosphere in the entertainment journalism world shifted rapidly from sensationalized gossip to a somber realization that Michael's life may have been defined by a profound medical crisis that the world chose to ignore. As the forensic team dug deeper, analyzing tissue samples and preparing for a full toxicological and genetic review, the true scale of Michael's physical deterioration became apparent. The man who had been practicing tirelessly for his upcoming This Is It comeback concerts in London had been operating under a level of physical duress that would have sidelined an ordinary person. The shocking beginning of this scientific investigation was not just about determining the cause of death. It was the start of an unprecedented biological excavation that would systematically dismantle the rumors that had defined his public persona for the latter half of his life. But that's only part of the story, because to understand why these physical findings were so revolutionary, one must look back at how the narrative around Michael's body was constructed in the first place, and the immense cultural weight that his appearance carried in America and across the world that to comprehend the full magnitude of what the scientific results eventually confirmed. We must journey back to the late 1970s and early 1980s. During the era of his landmark albums Off the Wall and Thriller, Michael Jackson was celebrated as a global symbol of Black excellence. He was a handsome, vibrant young Black man whose image graced the walls of millions of households. However, behind the scenes, a terrifying transformation was beginning to take place. According to close family members and long-term associates, Michael first began noticing unusual white spots appearing on his hands and arms around the time Thriller was taking the world by storm. In the beginning, these spots were small and easily concealed with standard theatrical makeup. But vitiligo is an unpredictable, progressive autoimmune disorder where the body's immune system mistakenly attacks and destroys melanocytes, the cells responsible for skin pigment. For a man whose entire career relied on visual perfection and constant public appearances, the onset of this condition was nothing short of a psychological nightmare. As the 1980s progressed into the bad era, the depigmentation accelerated dramatically. Michael found himself in an impossible situation. If he did nothing, his face and body would appear heavily splotched and uneven on camera, which would lead to even more intense public scrutiny and confusion. According to reports from medical insiders, his primary dermatologist, Dr. Arnold Klein, recommended a combination of treatments. Initially, they used dark makeup to cover the white patches, but as the white areas grew to encompass the majority of his body, the strategy had to change. It became far more efficient to use a topical cream called monobenzone, which is a medically approved treatment designed to depigment the remaining dark patches of skin to create a uniform, even skin tone. This was a standard medical protocol for patients with widespread vitiligo. Yet because Michael was an international superstar, the nuance of this medical treatment was entirely lost on the public. The mainstream media weaponized this transformation. They ignored his brief mentions of health issues and instead promoted the narrative that Michael Jackson desperately wanted to be white. This narrative fit into a larger cultural anxiety regarding race, identity, and the corrupting influence of extreme wealth in Hollywood. Tabloids invented stories about Michael sleeping in hyperbaric oxygen chambers to preserve his youth and undergoing dozens of completely fabricated surgeries to distance himself from his family. The nickname Wacko Jacko became a staple of entertainment journalism, effectively dehumanizing a man who was quietly dealing with a devastating autoimmune crisis. Fans speculate that the immense psychological stress of being called a liar by the entire world only exacerbated his autoimmune conditions, as stress is a well-documented trigger for vitiligo and related illnesses. What the public did not realize was that vitiligo rarely travels alone. It is frequently linked to other autoimmune disorders, most notably discoid lupus erythematosus, a condition that causes chronic inflammation, skin lesions, and extreme sensitivity to ultraviolet light. This explained Michael's sudden and permanent adoption of wide-brimmed hats, face masks, and umbrellas whenever he stepped out into the sun. To the casual observer watching reality TV or reading gossip magazines, these were the bizarre affectations of an eccentric billionaire. In reality, they were necessary medical defenses against a hostile environment that caused his skin to blister and scar. The hidden backstory of Michael's physical changes was a narrative of absolute isolation, where a man was forced to hide his vulnerability behind a mask of pop stardom, knowing that if he showed his true, splotched skin to the world, the mockery would only intensify. What happened behind closed doors during those intense years of fame was even more surprising, as his medical team worked around the clock to manage a body that was rapidly breaking down. Away from the blinding flashbulbs of the paparazzi and the screaming crowds of stadiums, Michael Jackson's daily routine was dictated by an extensive, painful medical regimen. Sources claim that his private residences, whether it was the sprawling Neverland Ranch or his later homes in Los Angeles, featured dedicated medical preparation areas. Because his skin lacked natural melanin, he was completely unprotected from the sun's destructive rays. The process of applying depigmenting creams and therapeutic ointments was an arduous, hours-long task that required absolute privacy. Michael was deeply self-conscious about his appearance without makeup. Former staff members reported seeing him in his private quarters without his usual cosmetics, describing his natural skin as a complex, marble-like tapestry of stark white and deep brown patches. He felt like a monster, a tragic irony for a man adored by billions for his beauty and grace. The physical pain was not limited to his skin. The chronic lupus caused severe joint pain and inflammation, particularly in his back and legs. This was a closely guarded secret because Michael's entire career was built on his unmatched, high-energy dancing. To maintain the illusion of youth and effortless agility during his massive world tours, such as the Dangerous and History tours, Michael had to endure grueling physical therapy and rely heavily on anti-inflammatory medications and pain relievers. The industry reaction to his occasional cancellations or erratic behavior was often cold and cynical, with promoters and executives accusing him of being dramatic or unstable, completely unaware of the physical toll his genetic predispositions were taking on his body. Furthermore, his changing facial structure, which was the subject of endless speculation, was partly tied to these medical battles. While Michael did admit to undergoing a limited number of elective rhinoplasties, medical experts have noted that lupus can cause significant tissue damage and scarring, particularly around the nasal cavity. Multiple surgeries were often required not for cosmetic enhancement, but to reconstruct tissue that was collapsing due to chronic inflammation and poor blood supply. Michael's reliance on dermatologists and plastic surgeons became a vicious cycle, where each attempt to fix a medical issue or conceal a flaw led to further complications, providing endless fuel for the Hollywood gossip machine. Behind closed doors, Michael also grappled with the profound emotional isolation that accompanied his condition. He felt betrayed by a media landscape that chose a sensationalized lie over a complex medical truth. This isolation led him to create an insular world where he felt safe, surrounding himself with children and animals who did not judge him for his changing face or skin color. But this sanctuary would ultimately become his undoing, as the public's deep misunderstanding of his lifestyle, combined with his physical vulnerabilities, laid the groundwork for the highly publicized legal battles and scandals that defined his later years. The world looked at his wealth and fame and assumed he had everything. But in reality, he was a prisoner of his own failing health, desperately seeking a cure or comfort for a body that was failing him on a fundamental genetic level. And this is where things took an unexpected turn, as the final scientific analysis after his death would bring all of these hidden struggles into the unyielding light of objective truth. The publication of Michael Jackson's official, full autopsy report by the Los Angeles County Department of Medical Examiner Coroner served as the ultimate turning point in this decades-long saga. It was a massive, highly technical document that provided an exhaustive look into his physical reality. When the lead medical examiner, Dr. Christopher Rogers, officially signed off on the findings, the conclusions regarding his skin were definitive and absolute. The report explicitly stated that Michael Jackson suffered from vitiligo, noting extensive patches of depigmentation across his chest, abdomen, face, and limbs. The forensic team verified that the melanocytes in these areas were completely destroyed. This was not a matter of debate, opinion, or clever PR management. It was an established forensic fact, validated by tissue biopsies and microscopic examination. Because what happened next surprised even longtime fans, the report went far beyond just confirming his skin condition. It revealed a complex internal landscape that painted a picture of a man surviving despite profound health challenges. The autopsy noted that his lungs were severely damaged by chronic inflammation, a condition known as respiratory bronchiolitis, which would have made breathing and singing simultaneously incredibly difficult and painful. The report also found evidence of osteoarthritis in his lower spine and fingers, confirming that the joint pain he had complained about for years was a legitimate, debilitating physical ailment. For the first time, the public was looking at a complete, unvarnished medical map of the King of Pop, and the image it presented was radically different from the media caricature of a fragile, vanity-obsessed eccentric. The scientific community also took a keen interest in these findings. Geneticists and dermatologists analyzed the data, noting that Michael's severe vitiligo and suspected lupus pointed to a highly active, dysregulated immune system, a trait that is deeply embedded in an individual's genetic code. This scientific revelation sparked a massive reevaluation of his life and career. Fans who had defended him for decades felt an immense sense of validation, while critics and journalists were forced to confront the reality that they had spent a quarter of a century mocking a man for a hereditary disease. The turning point was profound. It shifted the conversation from a critique of Michael's character to an examination of a society that failed to recognize a public health crisis hidden in plain sight. The fallout from these scientific revelations began to ripple through the entertainment industry. Television networks, documentaries, and news programs that had once produced highly profitable segments mocking his appearance were suddenly forced to revise their narratives. The autopsy report became a permanent record, an unassailable shield against future defamation regarding his skin color. However, the scientific investigation did not stop with his skin. It opened up a broader conversation about his genetic legacy, his ancestry, and the traits he passed down to his children, leading to a new wave of public fascination and scientific analysis that would delve even deeper into the mysteries of the Jackson family tree. The public reaction to the definitive scientific proof of Michael's medical conditions was a mixture of profound shock, collective guilt, and intense debate across social media platforms and mainstream media outlets. For years, the general public had accepted the narrative that Michael Jackson had actively chosen to change his race. When the cold, hard scientific data proved otherwise, it triggered a massive cultural reckoning. On platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and early internet forums, fans organized global campaigns to demand apologies from media figures who had been particularly cruel in their coverage of his transformation. Entertainment journalists who had made a career out of mocking Wacko Jacko found themselves facing intense backlash from a public that now saw them as bullies who had tormented a sick man. Expert commentators and cultural historians noted that the reaction highlighted a deep-seated double standard in celebrity journalism. While other public figures were granted empathy when dealing with visible illnesses, Michael was denied that basic human compassion because his illness manifested in a way that challenged deeply held cultural concepts of racial identity. Medical experts used the moment to educate the public about vitiligo, a condition that affects millions of people worldwide, but had never received such a high profile, albeit tragic, spotlight. Organizations dedicated to vitiligo awareness saw a massive surge in inquiries and donations as the world finally began to understand the psychological and physical devastation caused by the disease. Within the Jackson family, the reaction was one of bittersweet relief. Marlon, Tito, and Janet Jackson spoke out in various interviews, stating that they felt vindicated by the medical examiner's findings. They reminded the public that Michael had cried in private over the rumors, devastated that his community and his fans believed he wanted to erase his identity as a black man. The media fallout also extended to the financial realm, as the sudden shift in public perception sparked a massive resurgence in the popularity of his music. Albums like Thriller, Bad, and Dangerous surged back to the top of the charts as listeners re-engaged with his art through a lens of newfound empathy and understanding. Yet amid the vindication, a new wave of controversy was brewing. The scientific confirmation of his genetic vulnerabilities led to intense speculation about his children. Tabloids, refusing to completely abandon their sensationalist roots, began questioning the paternity of Prince, Paris, and B.G. Jackson, pointing to their fair skin and features as proof that they could not be biologically related to Michael. This sparked a complex, often ugly public debate about genetics, melanin expression, and what it truly means to be a family, forcing a deep dive analysis into the science of heredity and the future implications of Michael's genetic legacy. To fully understand the genetic questions that arose in the wake of Michael's passing, one must look at the complex science of melanin production and genetic inheritance. Human skin color is a polygenic trait, meaning it is controlled by multiple genes working together. When a person of African descent has children with a person of European descent, the genetic combinations can result in a wide spectrum of skin tones, hair textures, and facial features. Geneticists have repeatedly pointed out that it is entirely biologically possible for children of a mixed-race heritage to express traits that lean heavily toward one side of their ancestry. In the case of Michael's children, the public's lack of scientific literacy once again fueled skepticism, ignoring the reality that genetic expression is not a simple game of mixing paint, but a highly complex biological lottery. Furthermore, the discussion surrounding Michael's DNA extended to the inheritance of autoimmune diseases. Vitiligo and lupus have strong hereditary components. While an individual does not inherit the disease itself, they can inherit a genetic predisposition that makes them highly susceptible to developing autoimmune conditions if triggered by environmental factors or extreme stress. Medical researchers analyzing the broader implications of Michael's health profile have noted that his life provides a profound case study in how extreme psychological trauma and a high-stress lifestyle can accelerate genetic predispositions, creating a perfect storm of physical breakdown. This analysis has crucial implications for modern medicine, highlighting the undeniable link between mental well-being and physical health. The financial and legal implications of his biological legacy were equally massive. The Michael Jackson estate, managed by John Branca and John McClane, utilized the scientific vindication of his image to secure massive, unprecedented business deals. Documentaries like This Is It and successful theatrical productions like MJ the Musical were built on a foundation of celebrating his artistry while respecting the reality of his human struggles. The estate's value skyrocketed into the billions, proving that a clear, scientifically validated narrative could completely restore a tarnished public image and secure a celebrity's financial legacy for generations to come. Looking to the future, the scientific revelations surrounding Michael Jackson have transformed how the entertainment industry handles the health and privacy of its stars. There is now a much greater awareness of the hidden struggles of public figures, and the media faces far more intense scrutiny from audiences if they attempt to mock a celebrity for changes in their physical appearance or behavior without knowing the underlying medical facts. Michael's DNA did not just reveal his personal medical history. It served as a catalyst for a broader societal shift toward medical empathy, forcing us to look past the surface of fame to recognize the fragile human being underneath. I end the final analysis. The journey through Michael Jackson's genetic and medical history brings us to a profound, deeply emotional realization. For decades, the king of pop lived a double life. An public life of unmatched brilliance, glamour, and stadium-shaking performances, and a private life of intense, quiet physical suffering. The DNA and forensic science did not uncover a man who was running away from himself, but a man who was desperately trying to hold himself together under the crushing weight of a relentless, systemic disease and an even more relentless public judgment. The ultimate revelation hiding within his biological code was a testament to his extraordinary strength. Despite carrying a body that was lacking in natural protection, suffering from chronic joint and lung inflammation, and enduring a psychological trauma that few humans could ever comprehend, he still stepped onto those stages. He still danced with a precision that defied gravity, sang with a passion that moved millions, and dedicated a massive portion of his life and wealth to philanthropy and helping children around the world. The image of Michael Jackson holding an umbrella in the California sun or wearing a mask through airport terminals is no longer a symbol of Hollywood eccentricity. Science has permanently redefined those images as symbols of survival. He was a man fighting a quiet, genetic war against his own body, a war that he ultimately lost, but a war in which he was completely vindicated in the end. The collective guilt that society feels when looking back at how he was treated is a powerful reminder of the dangers of superficial judgment and the toxic nature of celebrity culture. As we look to the future, Michael Jackson's legacy is no longer defined solely by the rumors that plagued his life, but by the undeniable truths that science uncovered after his death. He remains an immortal figure in music, a pioneer who broke racial barriers in the industry, and now, a symbol of human fragility and resilience. The next time we hear his voice echoing through a speaker or watch him glide effortlessly across a stage in a vintage video clip, we will not just see an entertainer at the peak of his powers. We will see a human being who gave everything he had to the world, carrying a heavy, secret burden until the curtain finally fell, leaving behind a profound scientific and cultural truth that will echo through the halls of history forever.